Good morning, folks. It is Monday morning, August 10th at just before 9 a.m. in the morning. My name is Larry Cedar, and I'm back with you for another session on Sqanning, Sqanning, which is a relaxation technique which utilizes the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and ultimately mental calm. That's what we're trying to do here. We're going to spend the next half an hour about hopefully no more than that. I really try to keep it to a half an hour. Just incrementally releasing the muscular tension in our body, just to see what that can do for us. I started out this process because I read a book several years ago called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment by a man named Thaddeus Golas, Golas. He has since passed on. He's no longer with us. I was lucky enough to correspond with him very briefly, actually a couple of decades ago, and I feel very honored to have made contact with him. And he had this realization of sorts at some point in his life. He grew up in like the 60s and sort of a psychedelic era, and he had a revelation. And he shared this revelation in this book, which started out basically as a sheath of papers he passed out up in Haight-Ashbury, I think, up in the Bay Area, and ultimately was published as a book. And the basic premise of this book, if you can find the original edition, that's great. It was changed after that, I don't think as effectively as the original, but if you can find the original, that's great. But the basic premise was this. The universe is made of two basic processes: contraction, squeeze your hands together, see what that feels like, contraction, or expansion, release, that's expansion. The whole universe, everything you see, think about, taste, touch, build, destroy, everything, every process in life is fundamentally rooted in one of those two actions, contraction or expansion. And he said this is basically the simplest way to break down the universe, our very existence. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Wouldn't that be nice if we could explain everything in the universe with just those two processes? So I read this book, and I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and practically memorized it, and it began to make sense to me. And over time, I incorporated this theory into a physical technique, which I call scanning. I spell it Sqanning, just to be slightly different, but it basically references scanning the body in search of muscular tension. Muscles can either contract or release. Contraction, expansion. They're the perfect metaphor for this theory of Thaddeus Golas, contraction or expansion. So I myself and every one of us was at any given time in our lives either in a state which was more contracted or more expanded, and we can gauge that very easily. You can look at yourself every day and you can say, where am I at? Am I more contracted or am I more expanded? And to simplify things even more, what I discovered was that generally speaking, when I felt bad, I was contracted. Or I should say, when I became overly contracted, I felt bad. When I was expanded, in an expanded state, I felt good. We all want to feel good. Sometimes we have to feel bad, but we all want to feel good. It's nice to feel good. So I began to realize that if I could induce a state of expansion within myself at those times when I felt particularly contracted, and we'll go into detail about that, if I could induce a state of expansion in myself, I could actually help myself. I can make myself happier, and by association, the people around me. Because if I'm feeling better, I can make the people around me feel better. I can be more effective in my work, in my relationships, in my life. So I began to just gauge my life on that standard contraction, expansion. Where am I on the scale? And when I felt contracted, I said I need to expand. And I became expanded by incrementally releasing the muscular tension in my body. That's all this is. You could just say, well, that's just relaxation. Yes, it is. Muscular relaxation. See, we're always looking for solutions in life. Here's a problem, how do I fix it? Here's a problem, how do I fix it? Here's another problem, how do I fix it? 99.9% of the time, our solution to a problem is to form a contraction of sorts, to make a decision, to form a string of words or ideas, to build something, to actively destroy something. We contract, we take action, we do. Those are all typically have an underpinning of muscular contraction. When we go to do, when we go to think, when we go to solve, we tend to tense up. So they all work together. So I began to practice this theory, and I realized that expansion, the opposite of contraction, could be just as effective in terms of solving problems. Why? Contraction constricts, limits, decides, forms, structures, words, sentences. Expansion lets go, releases, makes space, is accepting. Equally valuable to contraction, but we don't think of it that way. We think contraction is always the answer. Whenever there's a problem, we must say, we must do, we must write, we must post, we must tweet, we must build, we must destroy, we must write, we must form sentences, we must argue, we must do. It feels like the obvious answer. Expansion sometimes doesn't. Let go, release, relax, open up, say yes, make space, accept. Doesn't seem like the obvious choice, and yet just as effective. So I decided to concentrate on expansion. That's why I came up with this technique, which I call scanning, Sqanning. So that's what we're going to practice today. So I've given you a lot of information about the background, but let's just get right to the technique. I really want to try to limit these sessions to a half an hour because diminishing returns. So if the universe is made of two basic forces, contraction and expansion, we can represent those two forces very simply. We can create a metaphor for that process, and we can even feel what it feels like to be in either a state of contraction or expansion. How? Take your hands, put them together, and squeeze tight. That's contraction. Now see what that feels like. What we're doing now is we're setting up this metaphor, what I call a binary metaphor. We can either be experiencing contraction or expansion. Right now we're concentrating on contraction and what it feels like. So squeeze tight. And just sit with that for a second. Contraction. It's one of the two basic forces in the universe. And that's what it feels like. It feels good in a way. You're exerting yourself. You're using your power, your strength. You're making something happen. Yes, contraction is the stuff of life. It's why we write books. It's how we write books. It's how we build skyscrapers. It's how we form relationships. We take action. We use muscular tension. We make things happen. It's good. But there's a downside to contraction, particularly when you become overly contracted. And that is what? See what it feels like. You become tight, uncomfortable, rigid, limited. Perhaps you stop breathing. You're holding your breath in order to maintain that tension. Maybe you feel unhappy. I'd rather not be in this state. Maybe it's a lot of work and you don't want to do it, but you have to, so you do. That's contraction. That's life. That's the stuff of life. That's how we get up in the morning and get on with our day. Unfortunately, when you become overly contracted, and that can happen for a variety of reasons, we contract out of fear, so sometimes when we're afraid, we just keep contracting. We can also become convinced it's the only solution, so we double down. Even if things aren't working, we contract even more. We become overly contracted, and the contraction makes us feel bad, so we contract even more to try to fix the contraction, and here we are, stuck. And that's when you feel bad. You're overly contracted. So now we talk about the solution. If we thought contraction was the solution and it's not working, perhaps the opposite process, expansion, might solve our problems. So let's see what that does for us. It's not the go-to solution in most cases. Typically we contract. But let's explore the possibility that the opposite of contraction, expansion, is equally useful in solving our problems. And what we're going to do is, on the count of 3, you're going to completely release all the tension in your hands. You're going to drop your hands to your side. You're going to see what that feels like, and then you're going to take a series of deep, deep breaths. 3, 2, 1, release. Drop your hands, take 3 deep breaths. 1. That's 2. And we're going to finish that by sitting in 15 seconds of stillness and silence. You can close your eyes or not if you like. Now, there's a couple reasons we sit in stillness and silence. One is to shut myself up, because words are a contraction, they are a structure. We're working again towards expansion. Silence is the opposite of words and thought. Words and thought are a contraction, silence is expansion. So that's one reason. We sit in stillness because we're so used to being physically ready in a state of contraction, muscular tension, that when we sit in stillness, we're sending a signal to our body that it's time to stop contracting and begin expansion. So these are what I call the preliminary steps. This is the first half of this process. There's 2 halves to this process, which I call scanning. This is the preliminary phase. We've been in a state of contraction, presumably. That's why we're working on this. That's represented by the squeezing of the hand. So the first thing we did is we set up this binary metaphor. Contraction, 3, 2, 1, release. Now we did two things by doing that. We physically released our body, number one. Number two, we reminded ourselves that we are in complete control of our state of consciousness. No matter what you're feeling at any given moment, no matter how contracted you may be, it's within your power to expand. So we did that. Then we took 3 deep breaths. Breaths, by their physical nature, are expansive. If you've been contracted, you've been probably holding your breath. You've been in a tense, contracted state. So we take 3 deep breaths to physically expand and to break the cycle of contraction. So 3 things: squeeze, release, deep breaths, stillness, and silence. These 3 steps, what I call the preliminary phase of scanning, are a way to shock your system out of its contracted state. We tend to get locked into a contracted state. Why? Because it feels secure. It feels safe. We hold on to it. We hold on. We hold tight. We freeze. You know, when you're tense, when you're nervous, when you're afraid, you tend to take a position and hold it out of fear. The last thing you want to do when you're scared or tense or angry or whatever state of contraction you're in is to let go of that state of contraction. It feels like a solution. And to let go of it seems as though that's to completely lose. So you hold tight. So we take these 3 preliminary steps: squeeze, release, deep breaths, stillness, and silence, to shock ourselves out of our state of contraction and into a state of expansion. It's very important to remember. You can't contract and expand at the same time. You can't make a fist and open your fist at the same time. So the moment you begin to expand, you've stopped contracting. It's a beautiful fact of our existence, of our life. If you choose to expand, you are no longer contracting. Once you head down that road, you are no longer going down this road. It's a great thing because it's not like, you'll struggle with yourself. You'll keep wanting to go back to contraction, but you can't do both at the same time. So anything you can do to move towards expansion is moving you in the right direction. So let's do this preliminary set of steps 3 times, and then we're going to move into the real nuts and bolts of this technique, which is incremental muscular release, the deepest form of expansion. Squeeze your hands together, tight, tight, tight. That's contraction. Let's see what that feels like. This is the choice you've made as a solution in life, generally speaking. When we have problems, we have issues that need to be solved, when we need to make a living, when we need to make a stand, we take our muscles, our minds, and we contract. We form an idea. We take action. That can be 1,000 different things. It can be posting, tweeting, arguing, yelling, screaming, saying something, not saying something, making a decision, taking action. So we do that as a form of solution. So that's where we're at, tight. The problem is we become overly contracted. We become rigid, inflexible, locked into a position, frozen, in denial, in a state of no. So we can reverse that. It's within your power. All you need to do is do it. 3, 2, 1, release. See what that feels like, to completely let go of contraction. Let your hands drop. Take 3 deep breaths. Expanding. As deep as you can. 15 seconds of stillness and silence. And now just see how that feels. Now these sessions are short. They're only about a half an hour. When I do a session of my own, I typically take an hour. It could take a while to bring yourself out of a state of contraction. It's a gentle nudging, a persuasion. Your body is locked in. It's like a dog that doesn't want to go for a walk. It's just frozen. But take an assessment and see if you've moved the dial at all. Remember, we were overly contracted. We're trying to become expanded. Have you moved it 1%? If so, it's a victory. Any movement towards expansion is a victory, because if you're expanding, you're not contracting. So you've moved yourself in the correct direction. Now here's what I feel. Well, after these initial steps, I usually feel the same thing. I like to tell how I'm feeling, but it's pretty much always the same thing. I suddenly feel more comfortable in my chair. I just feel very comfortable being still. The sense of compulsion that was in me, the sense that I needed to be doing something, thinking something, posting something, saying something, going somewhere, has eased up. I begin to feel settled, more settled and comfortable in my chair, more in the moment. The things which my mind had attached itself to are receding into the distance. The reason we work with the physical, because the muscles are simple. They can either contract or expand. If we try to work with our mind to calm ourselves down, the mind will argue. Argue. The mind is very clever. It will always find a way around your attempts to relax it. The muscles will listen to you. Expand. This sense of expansion will infuse your body. Ultimately, it will affect your mind. If the mind is like a muscle, and it is contracted, it is holding on to ideas, thoughts, many of them negative, obsessive, concepts, political arguments, and you relax your body, your mind will follow, and your mind too will relax, like a muscle, and all those thoughts that it's hanging on to will just simply float away, and your mind will be clear and calm and at peace. That's the ultimate goal, but we get there through the body. So that's what's happened to me. I feel slightly calmer. My head is more clear. I feel more comfortable in silence. So that's the preliminary phase. Again, that preliminary phase. And if you do nothing else, if you can't remember this and everything else I've told you, do nothing else. Just take deep, deep breaths and sit in stillness and silence. Take more deep breaths and then sit in stillness and silence. And you may get dizzy. It's disorienting. It's sort of a rough road coming out of contraction. It's like you're coming out of a cave. So you might feel strange. That's okay. That's okay. But if nothing else, this is just a reminder about contraction and expansion. Beyond that, deep, deep breaths, stillness and silence. Deep, deep breaths, stillness and silence. Do that for 15 minutes. See what it does for you. So now we move into the nuts and bolts of the technique. Remember, scanning, S-Q-A-N-N-I-N-G, is the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, primarily, followed by emotional and mental calm. That's the goal. We can't be calm and centered and at peace 24 hours a day. But when we're at the brink, when we feel pushed to our limits, when we are overly contracted, we can bring ourselves back from that state and find a moment of calm and peace, comfort, joy. We're like pendulums in life. We swing back and forth. That's natural. You can't be enlightened and at peace and happy all the time, obviously. But you can find a way to bring yourself back to a place of calm without having to take a drink of alcohol or smoke a joint or take a pill or drive a half an hour to your therapist and write them a check for $200 or go to a masseuse. You can do it for yourself, which is the best feeling of all. We tend to think that the solutions lie outside of us, when in fact, all the solutions lie within. When you rediscover that fact and realize that you have it within you to heal yourself, it's enormously satisfying. You don't have to be so concerned. Wherever you are, anywhere in the universe, you can bring yourself into a state of peace. It's a very good feeling. So now we're going to work on the specific muscle groups. Again, scanning is the incremental release of muscular tension. At its root, all we're doing is relaxing the muscles. Incrementally, small amounts. It's very difficult to say, relax your whole body, but you can do it incrementally. You can gently persuade your bodies to ease up, to open up. So I break the body into 8 zones. 1 the face, 2 the top of the head, 3 the back of the head, 4 the neck, 5 the shoulders, 6 the chest and stomach, 7 the back into the pelvis, and 8 down the legs and into the feet. And don't worry if you can't remember these. We're going to go over this many times. And you can break your body up into whatever zones you like. The whole point is to get specific, to focus on small areas. Because it's challenging to release the muscles of the body. Our default position in life is contraction. We're always carrying with us a low level of tension in our bodies. We're just used to it. It's the way we go through life. It's the way we sleep. It's the way we eat. Everything we do, we're carrying this low level of muscular tension as a means of protecting ourselves. The only way to get out of that is either by drugs or self-inducement, but you have to make the effort. So we do it incrementally. It's very difficult to persuade your body to completely let go, but it will let go completely if you do it incrementally. So we start with the face. On my count, I want you to release a small amount of tension from the muscles of your face. Like this. Watch my face. 3, 2, 1. I use the face because it's sort of demonstrative of what physically happens. Your muscles just sag. They let go. It's as if you've turned off the power source to the muscles. If this is your hand, this is your muscles, you're going to flip the switch, turn the power off, and watch what happens. 3, 2, 1. Power off. So we're turning off the power to these muscles, and we're letting them sag, release, relax, expand. The face. 3, 2, 1. And very specifically, what you need to do when this happens is note. Make a note to yourself. Note to self. Oh, that's what it feels like to incrementally release my muscles. Even if it's just a tiny amount, I want you to register what it feels like so that you can repeat it and do it again on demand. The face. 3, 2, 1. That slight sagging, that letting go sensation, that slouching sensation. It's the feeling you get when you've had a drink and you wait a couple minutes, and depending on the strength of the drink, it kicks in and you go, ah. It's a release, which is also a relief. It's work to maintain this low level of tension all the time within our bodies. We're not even aware of it, but we're working all day carrying this low level of muscular tension. We're just kind of keeping it together, keeping it together. I got to keep it together. I can't let go. Got to keep it together. And it's exhausting. It's why we're so tired all the time. We're constantly holding on to this tension, not just muscular, but mental tension. We're always thinking. I have to say, social media is exhausting. Exhausting. The amount of energy and time you have to put into posting, tweeting, responding. Look, I do it. It's a useful tool, but it's exhausting. The effort, the mental effort it takes. So give yourself a break. Dial it down. The face. 3, 2, 1. Release. So that's what that feels like. Top of the head. 3, 2, 1. Release. Now you go, the top of my head, I don't even know what that feels like. I don't even think about the top of my head. There's muscles there? Yes. I like to say you have a crinkled shirt, just came out of the dryer, and you're going to pass a steamer over it, and those wrinkles are going to relax and just spread over your head. So think of that. 3, 2, 1. Release. And you'll feel this sort of smoothing sensation, almost like someone just poured some chocolate syrup on your top of your head and you feel it sort of dripping down your head. There's this letting go. You're letting go of tension. Tension you just don't need to be holding on to. You're wasting energy. You're just sitting here. Now's your chance. Take these moments during the day to let go of that tension. The top of the head. 3, 2, 1. Release. Add that to the face, both together. 3, 2, 1. Release. Now you're going to feel a couple of things. Tension restricts and constrains feelings and sensations. As you begin to release, you will begin to actually feel these muscles. You'll suddenly become aware of them. You've kind of lost touch with how you feel, what it feels like to be a human. A breathing, sensing human. So feelings start to come in. When tension goes away, feelings rush in. These are feelings you've buried with tension. You may begin to also feel emotional feelings. So these are a couple of things to look for. These are all good signs. These are signs that you are beginning to expand. You may also feel a little bit afraid, uncomfortable with those feelings. You may be afraid because you're letting go of control. That might make you nervous. So it's a very bumpy road. I say rough seas. It's unsettling to let go of muscular contraction because you feel as though you're losing control. But it's just a feeling. You're not. You're just sitting here. So move through those feelings. The back of the head. 3, 2, 1. Release. Again, 3, 2, 1. Release. And you're going, I don't feel anything. Fine. I always say, keep knocking at that door. Eventually, it's going to open and you're going to go inside into this beautiful expanded state. You're not feeling anything for a couple of reasons. One, because you don't want to. There's a sort of resistance to the process. I don't want to open up. I don't want to let go. So you cut yourself off from it. I've been doing this for years. I still feel it every time. I go, oh, no, 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 I don't want to let go. Oh, no, 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 I can't. I can't afford to. But I know better now. So that's the first reason you don't feel anything. The second reason is it's new. You haven't done it before. It's like learning the piano. You have to practice. These are sensations we haven't focused on. We focus on a lot of other sensations. We're very familiar with how it feels to squeeze and release our hands. We do that all the time. Releasing the muscles of the back of the head, what is that? I've never done that. So you're beginning to learn. The more you do it, the better you will get at it. the back of the head. 3, 2, 1, release. Zone 4 is the neck. Just think about your neck, focus on your neck. 3, 2, 1, release. And you're going to want to take breaths, because as you start to release, your body starts to relax. You're typically depleted of oxygen when you're tense because you've been holding. You haven't been breathing as much as you need to. So as you begin to relax, you're going to feel impulse to take a breath. Take those breaths. Take as many deep breaths as you can. We can afford 100 more deep breaths a day than we actually are giving ourselves. So take those breaths. They're very expansive. Very expansive. So again, you're looking for this feeling of release. 3, 2, 1, release. And you're going to start to, about midway into the process, go, oh, because you're beginning to allow yourself to feel it. You're going to go, oh, that's what it is. Yeah, I get it. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. And it's going to be very exciting, because you're going to realize you have this control over your body you didn't even know you had. You can make yourself relax. You can induce a state of physical relaxation. You just have to practice. The neck. 3, 2, 1, release. So now these 4 zones have joined together. They're sort of like this hood of relaxation. So let them all go at once. 3, 2, 1, release. Now you're starting to feel it. Take a deep breath. One more. And even breathing is easier now. Deep breath. I'm feeling tingling. I'm feeling a little dizzy. That's okay. I'm feeling a throbbing. I'm much more aware of my heartbeat. I'm starting to come alive. Contraction cuts you off from the very sense of being that is within you at all times. It's starting to come back. It's almost scary, because you start to feel, it's almost like a sensual experience. You start to feel like you're coming back into yourself. Zone 5 is the shoulders. Just let them drop a tiny amount. 3, 2, 1, release. Now my entire state of being is changed. Again, I do this all the time, but I still move into contraction every day, very powerfully all the time, as my go-to solution to everything. So even though I know I shouldn't, sometimes it's just instinct. And I pull myself out of it with expansion, and I begin to feel myself again. I come back to myself. I'm not as anxious. I'm not thinking as many obsessive thoughts. My sense of compulsion to go, do, say, think are decreasing. I'm detaching myself from external processes. I'm feeling more comfortable in the moment, just sitting and being. It's the best place in the world to be. Stillness and silence. It's where it all starts, and it's where it all ends. Zone 5, the shoulders. 3, 2, 1, let them drop. There you go. Which leads into the chest and stomach and waist. Zone 6, 3, 2, 1, release. And we're going to wrap this up in 5 minutes. Again, I'm trying to stick to a half an hour, so I'm moving through these fairly quickly. Afterwards, take as much time as you want. It's difficult to discipline yourself to do this. The rewards, however, are enormous. Zone 7, the back down into the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, release. The pelvis, very sensitive area, the area of sexuality and waste elimination. We hold a lot of tension there out of fear, for obvious reasons. We fear loss of control. We fear embarrassment. We fear having sensations that we can't control. I'm just going to be really honest with you. There's a lot going on down there. If you can release the tension in your pelvis and explore what tensions you are holding there and let them go, you will again reap enormous benefits. This all contributes to the overall expansion of your physicality, which in turn leads to the expansion of your emotions and frees your mind. The back down into the pelvis, zone 7, 3, 2, 1, release. Final zone, zone 8, down the legs, over the knees and into the feet. The feet also very sensitive. 3, 2, 1, release. Again, the legs down into the feet. 3, 2, 1, release. Deep breath. And 2 more. 1 more. 1 more for good luck. 30 seconds of stillness and silence. And really tune into the difference you're feeling in this more expanded state. Deep breath. And that's about it for today. I'm going to do a quick review. We started out by talking about the fact that the universe is made of two basic processes: contraction, squeeze your hands together, and expansion. That's all you need to know. If you look at everything in that lens, it will explain a lot. So we start out by representing those two processes with this binary metaphor, where you're either contracted, squeeze your hands together, or expanded, release. Squeeze your hands tight, 3, 2, 1, release, let them drop. So you felt the difference between contraction and expansion. Then we took 3 expansive breaths to physically expand. Again, we're moving ourselves towards expansion. That's the goal. We took in oxygen, which replenished our body. We're moving ourselves from a state of locked-in contraction to a state of expansion. It might be disorienting. 3 deep breaths. Then we sit for 15 seconds in stillness and silence to adjust to this change. It's a sea change. We're moving from contraction into expansion. Stillness is the opposite of action or contraction. Silence is the opposite of words or thought, which are also contractive. So we take 15 seconds to move ourselves again into an expanded state. And again, if you only have a limited amount of time, if you take nothing else from this session, remember, deep breaths followed by stillness and silence, followed by deep breaths, more stillness and silence. If you do nothing else but 15 minutes of that, you will achieve an enormous amount of benefit. You will have expanded yourself a large amount. We followed by the specific work of Sqanning, which is the incremental release of muscular tension. The face, 3, 2, 1, release. The top of the head, 3, 2, 1, release. The back of the head, 3, 2, 1, release. The neck, 3, 2, 1, release. The shoulders, see everything dropping, releasing, slouching. 3, 2, 1, release. Give in to that muscular release. 5, the shoulders, 3, 2, 1, release. The chest and stomach, 3, 2, 1, release. The back down into the pelvis, 3, 2, 1, release. The legs down into the feet, 3, 2, 1, release. Deep breath. Now, if you've moved yourself 1% into a more expanded state, it is a major victory. Remember, when you're expanding, you can't be contracting. You can't do both at the same time. Any degree of expansion is a victory. So practice as much or as little as you can. The benefits are enormous. You will get better and better and better at it. You will find that you have the power within you to change your state of consciousness at any given moment of the day, the week, the month, your life. You will achieve balance. You will begin to more effectively address the issues facing you in your life, in your relationships, in your work, in your very sense of being. You will find peace and calm, stillness, and ultimately joy. So good luck. I try to be here every couple of days. Sometimes I'm here every day. In any case, I always repost this session on my personal Facebook page. I leave it up for 24 hours. I also post it on the Sqanning Facebook page, Sqanning. You can go there anytime to see this and previous sessions. So come as often as you like. Remember, it's Sqanning, Sqanning. It is the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep, deep state of physical, emotional, and ultimately mental calm. Have a great day. Rule number 1 is love yourself. There's an ultimately infinite amount of love available in the universe. Take as much as you need to give to yourself. You deserve it. When you have so much that it's spilling over, pass it around to everyone else. We could all use it. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.